Welcome. Settle into a comfortable position. Allow your breathing to slow, and prepare to step back through the centuries to a world both familiar and profoundly distant from our own. Tonight, we journey to ancient Rome, to the life of those who lived and died in the arena, the gladiators. Imagine yourself not as a tourist observing from safety, but as someone caught within the machinery of Roman spectacle. You will experience the weight of chains, the rhythm of brutal training, the roar of thousands demanding blood. We will walk through the revolt that shook an empire, pause to consider the mysteries of Roman engineering that still puzzle us today, and finally relax in the steaming luxury of the imperial baths. Let the modern world fade away. The soft glow of screens, the hum of electricity, the certainty of tomorrow, all these comforts dissolve. In their place, the ancient Mediterranean sun, the smell of olive oil and sweat, the ever-present knowledge that life could end suddenly, violently, for the entertainment of strangers. Take a slow breath. Close your eyes if you wish. We begin in the shadows of a gladiatorial school, where men prepare to die with dignity, hoping that skill and fortune might grant them one more sunrise. The lanista examines you with the calculating gaze of someone assessing livestock. You stand in the courtyard of the ludus, the gladiatorial school, your wrists still bearing the marks of recent chains. Perhaps you were captured in Germania, your village burned, your family scattered. Or perhaps you committed some crime in a provincial town and were sentenced to the arena. Or, and this is the strangest fate of all, perhaps you volunteered, signing away your freedom for coin, driven by debts you could not pay or dreams of glory you could not resist. The ludus rises around you, 3 stories of stone and plaster forming a rectangle. The walls are high, unscalable. At night, you will learn. Guards walk the perimeter. Men are chained in their cells after dark, not from cruelty particularly, but from necessity. Gladiators represent significant financial investment, and the lanista cannot risk escape or suicide. You are property now, albeit valuable property, and you will be maintained accordingly. Your new home sits on the outskirts of the city, perhaps near Capua or Rome itself. The structure is purpose-built a prison, a training ground, and a factory for producing arena fighters. The courtyard where you now stand is packed earth, already stained dark in places from years of practice combat. Wooden posts rise at intervals, their surfaces scarred by countless sword strikes. Straw dummies wear battered armor. The space smells of dust, sweat, leather, and something metallic you cannot quite identify. Blood, perhaps, or simply the accumulated residue of iron weapons in the Mediterranean heat. The lanista speaks. His voice is neither kind nor particularly cruel, simply matter of fact. You will train 6 days each week, he explains. You will eat a specific diet designed to build muscle and layer your body with protective fat. You will learn to fight, to fall, to die with style if death becomes necessary. If you survive long enough, prove skilled enough, become popular enough with the crowds, you might eventually earn your freedom, the wooden sword, the rudis that signals your release from this life. He does not mention the statistics. Most gladiators do not survive their first year in the arena. For every famous champion who retires wealthy, dozens die unknown, their bodies dragged through the sand by hooks, dumped in mass graves outside the city walls. But for now, you simply listen. Your training begins tomorrow. The morning arrives too early. You wake on a hard wooden bench in a cell barely large enough to lie down in. Perhaps 8 or 10 men share this space, sleeping in shifts or huddled together for warmth on cold nights. The door is heavy wood reinforced with iron. During the night, it was locked from outside, and chains were attached to the iron rings set into the walls. The other men in your cell are a varied collection. One is a Gaul, tall and fair-haired, captured in one of the northern campaigns. Another is Egyptian, dark-skinned, and tattooed with symbols you do not recognize. A third is Roman-born, a volunteer who signed the gladiatorial oath, the octoramentum, binding himself to be burned by fire, bound in chains, beaten, and killed by the sword in exchange for payment. You cannot fathom this choice, but desperation takes many forms. Perhaps he had debts. Perhaps he sought glory. Perhaps he simply had no other options in a world where labor is cheap and life cheaper still. The cell door opens. A guard, himself a former gladiator, too injured to fight, but still useful, motions you toward the courtyard. You file out into the pale dawn light. The air is cool, relatively fresh. In an hour, the courtyard will be stifling, but for now, you can breathe without feeling the heat press against your lungs. Breakfast is surprisingly substantial. You eat barley porridge, beans, and dried fruit. Occasionally there is meat, pork, or goat, never the beef that wealthy Romans prefer. The diet is high in protein and carbohydrates, designed to build muscle mass quickly. Gladiators are called horgeri, barley men, because the grain features so prominently in their meals. It is better food in quantity and quality than most free Romans eat. Laborers and urban poor subsist on bread and thin wine, occasionally supplemented with vegetables or fish sauce. You, as a gladiator, eat more richly than citizens. This is the paradox of your existence. You are property, infamous, legally shameful. A gladiator loses many citizen rights. Even volunteers become non-persons in the eyes of the law. You cannot serve in the military, hold public office, or marry a freeborn woman. Yet you are maintained like a valuable racehorse, fed and housed and given medical care that most Romans will never experience. When you are injured in training, not if, but when a physician will attend you. The ludus employs a medicus specially trained in treating sword wounds, broken bones, and the various traumas of combat training. After breakfast, the training begins. The doctors stride into the courtyard. These are your instructors, former gladiators who survived long enough to retire and now teach the arts of arena combat. Each specializes in a particular fighting style. Rome has categorized gladiatorial combat into distinct types, each with specific weapons, armor, and tactics. You will be assigned to one of these categories based on your body type, strength, and the Lanista's assessment of what will make you most marketable. The Murmillo fights with a gladius, the short Roman sword, and carries a large rectangular shield called a scutum. He wears a distinctive helmet with a fish crest on top. The name Murmillo comes from the Greek word for a type of fish. His right arm is protected by a manica, layered linen or leather, reinforced with metal strips. His left leg wears a greave, a metal shin guard. Otherwise, he fights nearly naked, wearing only a loincloth. The Murmillo represents the traditional Roman soldier, and is often matched against a retiarius. The retiarius is the most unusual gladiator type. He carries a trident, a dagger, and a weighted net. He wears almost no armor, no helmet, just a shoulder guard called a gallerus on his left arm, and a manica on the right. His strategy is speed and distance. He attempts to entangle his opponent in the net, then finish him with the trident. If the net cast fails, he must rely on agility to survive. Retiari are considered the lowest status of gladiators, perhaps because they fight without the dignified armor and helmet of other types. Yet they are popular with crowds for the drama of their combat style. The Thrax or Thracian fights with a curved sword called a sica and carries a small square shield. He wears protective guards on both legs, and his helmet features a griffin or griffin on the crest. The sica can hook around an opponent's shield, making the Thrax dangerous in close combat. There are other types as well. The secutor, or chaser, is designed specifically to fight retiari as smooth. Egg-shaped helmet prevents the net from catching on protrusions. The hoplomachus carries a spear and small round shield, fighting in the style of a Greek hoplite. The equides are mounted gladiators who begin their combat on horseback, then continue on foot. You are assigned to train as a Murmillo. Perhaps your build suggests strength rather than speed. Perhaps the ludus simply needs more Murmillones. You do not question the decision. You have no say in it. The wooden sword is heavier than you expected. The training weapons are deliberately weighted, often twice as heavy as the real blades you will eventually use in the arena. The principle is ancient and sound trained with heavy equipment, and the lighter combat gear will feel easy by comparison. Your shield, too, is weighted. Your arm trembles after holding it in defensive position for even a few minutes. The doctor demonstrates the basic stance. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, shield up protecting your torso and face, sword held ready near your hip. The position feels unnatural at first. Your muscles protest. Within minutes, your shield arm begins to ache. You strike the wooden post. Again. The doctor corrects your form too much shoulder, not enough hip rotation. Your footwork is wrong. Again. The Mediterranean sun climbs higher. Sweat runs down your face, stings your eyes, drips onto the packed earth. Your hands blister. By mid-morning, they are bleeding. You continue striking the post. Around you, other trainees practice their own techniques. The Risharius in training casts his weighted practice net again and again, learning the precise wrist motion needed to spread it effectively. The Threx works on the hooking motion of his curved blade. Grunts, the thud of wood on wood, the occasional cry of pain when someone mistimes a defensive movement and takes a practice sword to the ribs. These are the sounds of the ludus. At midday, there is a brief rest. You collapse in the shade, chest heaving. Water is provided, and you drink deeply. Your hands throb. Every muscle you possess seems to have discovered new ways to hurt. And this is only the first morning. The afternoon brings partner drills. You are matched with another trainee, both of you with wooden weapons. You practice attacks and defenses, learning to read your opponent's movements, to anticipate, to react with speed even as exhaustion clouds your mind. The doctor watches, staff in hand. When your form deteriorates, the staff strikes your shoulders or legs, not hard enough to injure, but sharp enough to focus your attention. You learn that the arena demands more than strength or skill. It requires showmanship. A gladiator who kills efficiently, but without flair, will not gain popularity. A gladiator who fights with style, who creates dramatic moments, who engages with the crowd, this man will be remembered, will earn the love of the spectators, will be more likely to receive mercy if defeated. The doctor demonstrates the proper way to fall when wounded, how to raise your finger in the gesture requesting mercy, how to position yourself for the killing stroke if mercy is denied. You will die well, he explains, if you must die. You will give the crowd a death worth watching. This, too, is a skill. As the weeks pass, the rhythm of the ludus becomes familiar. Wake before dawn, eat. Train until your body threatens to give out. Eat again. Train more. Bathe in the ludus's small bath complex. Eat a final meal. Return to your cell. The routine is numbing in its repetition, yet each day brings incremental improvement. Your hands develop thick calluses. Your muscles grow denser. Your movements more economical. You learn to conserve energy during combat, to breathe properly, to remain calm even when exhausted. You also learn the social hierarchy of the ludus. At the top are the veterans, men who have survived dozens of arena fights. They receive better cells, sometimes private rooms. They eat first. They may have relationships with certain guards or administrators, may even receive visits from admirers, wealthy women who find gladiators exotic and sexually appealing, despite or perhaps because of their legal infamy. This phenomenon puzzles you. How can someone be simultaneously despised, as shameful and desired as a celebrity? Yet you witness it. Graffiti in Pompeii praises gladiators as suspirium puellarum, the heartthrob of girls. Below the veterans are the journeymen, men who have survived a few fights and proven themselves competent. They have status earned through survival. Their opinions carry weight in the informal disputes that arise among the gladiators. At the bottom are the novitius, the new trainees. You are among them. You have no status, no respect, no privilege. You do as you are told. You eat last. You clean the training weapons. You sleep in the most crowded cells. If you survive your first arena appearance, this will change. Until then, you are barely worth notice. Sexual exploitation is common, though rarely discussed openly. Men with power guards, veteran gladiators, sometimes the lanista himself, may demand sexual access from younger, weaker trainees. Resistance is possible, but dangerous. You might win one confrontation, but the repercussions could be severe worse training assignments, withheld food, beatings. Some men submit to preserve their safety. Others resist and accept the consequences. There is no good choice, only degrees of survival. The ludus physician examines you periodically. He checks for signs of disease, inspects injuries, ensures you are healing properly from training wounds. He applies poultices, sets broken bones, occasionally performs minor surgeries. His skills are considerable. He must keep expensive property functional. A dead gladiator represents lost investment, and while death is expected eventually, the lanista wants you to survive as many arena appearances as possible, maximizing return on the purchase price or training investment. You receive better medical care than most Romans will ever see. If you break your arm, it will be set properly. If you develop an infection, it will be treated with wine-soaked bandages and herbal remedies. If you suffer a serious wound in the arena, surgeons skilled in battlefield medicine will attend you. The irony is not lost on you. You are property, yet maintained with care that free citizens cannot afford. The nighttime hours are long. Chained in your cell, or simply locked behind the heavy door, you have time to think. You remember your old life, though those memories grow hazier as weeks turn to months. Did you have a family? Children? A trade? That existence seems increasingly unreal, a dream from which you have awakened into a harsher reality. You think about the arena. You have not yet fought there, but you know it approaches. The lanista will not keep you training indefinitely. Once he judges you ready or ready enough, you will be sold or rented to the editor, the person financing the games. You will enter the amphitheater. You will fight. The veteran gladiators sometimes speak of their arena experiences. Their stories are neither boastful nor modest, simply factual recitations of what happened. One describes the noise, a wall of sound so overwhelming that it becomes almost meaningless, a roar that drowns out thought. Another talks about the sand, how it shifts under your feet, how blood makes it sticky. A third mentions the smell of 50,000 unwashed bodies packed into stone seats, mixed with the scent of the animals held beneath the arena floor, the perfumes the crowd sprays to mask the odor, the metallic tang of blood on sand. They mention the heat. Most games are held during daylight, and the Mediterranean sun turns the arena floor into an oven. You will be fighting while wearing metal armor, exerting maximum physical effort in temperatures that would make a farmer seek shade. Dehydration and heat exhaustion kill gladiators as surely as swords do. They describe the different types of crowds. Morning audiences are relatively sedate, eating breakfast while watching the animal hunts. Midday crowds are rowdier, having consumed wine, shouting for the executions of criminals. Afternoon audiences, waiting for the main gladiatorial combats, are the most bloodthirsty. They have paid specifically to see trained fighters kill each other, and they expect entertainment for their coin. You learn that skill matters, but luck matters more. A turned ankle can mean death, a moment's inattention, a splinter of wood from a broken shield catching in your eye. You can train for years and still die in your first fight because of something beyond your control. But you also learn that death is not guaranteed. Many fights end not in killing, but in missio, the referee's decision to stop combat and spare both fighters. If the fight has been entertaining enough, if both men have shown courage and skill, if the crowd is satisfied, the editor may grant missio. Both gladiators leave the arena alive to fight another day. And if you are defeated, If you fall wounded, unable to continue, then comes the moment of missio, or death. You will raise your left hand, extending a single finger, the gesture requesting mercy. The crowd will react. They may wave handkerchiefs and shout mit, meaning release him. Or they may press their thumbs not down as Hollywood depicts, but likely turn toward their chests or thrust upward and shout yugula, meaning cut his throat. The editor makes the final decision, though he is guided by crowd sentiment. If the spectators are pleased, if you fought well, if your courage impressed them, mercy is likely. If you fought poorly, if you showed cowardice, if the crowd feels cheated of good entertainment, then death. You imagine this moment, lying in the dark cell. Would you be brave? Would you meet the sword calmly, as the doctor taught, maintaining dignity in death? Or would you beg, cry, claw at the sand in desperation? You do not know. You hope you will not need to find out. The months continue their slow procession. Summer heat becomes autumn cooling. Training continues. Your body has transformed. You are harder now, layered with muscle. Your reactions faster. Your weapons feeling lighter despite their training weight. The doctor nods more frequently during drills, corrects you less often. You are becoming competent. You observe the hierarchies more subtly now. You understand which veterans command genuine respect versus those who are simply feared. You recognize the administrators who can be bribed for small favors, an extra portion of food, permission to keep a personal item. You learn which guards are cruel for pleasure versus those who simply enforce rules without additional malice. Friendships form, though cautiously. The man sleeping beside you in the cell is a Dacian, captured in one of Trajan's campaigns. He teaches you words in his language during the evening hours. You trade stories of your former lives, though both of you suspect the other embellishes or invents details. What does it matter? The past is gone. Only the present exists, the ludus, the training, the approaching arena. Some men turn to religion for comfort. The ludus has a small shrine where gladiators may pray. Some honor Mars, god of war. Others pray to Hercules, mythical hero and patron of strength. A few maintain devotion to foreign gods, Mithras, Isis, the countless deities of the empire's provinces. The lanista permits this. Faith costs him nothing and may improve morale. You are unsure what you believe anymore. If gods exist, they seem distant, unconcerned with the lives of gladiators. Or perhaps they watch with interest, the way Romans watch arena combats, entertained by suffering, pleased by courage, indifferent to death. The thought is not comforting. One evening, a veteran gladiator dies in his cell. He simply fails to wake up. Perhaps his heart gave out, or some injury took delayed revenge. The body is carried away without ceremony. His possessions, a few coins, a good luck charm, a letter from someone, are collected by the lanista's men. Within a day, a new trainee occupies his space. The rhythm of the ludus continues unchanged. This too is a lesson. Life here is provisional, temporary. You are meat being readied for market. The lanista cares about your value, not your existence. The doctor maintains you as one maintains a tool. The guards watch you as one watches potentially dangerous livestock. You are not a person in this place. You are a future spectacle, a body that will bleed in the sand for the amusement of crowds. And yet you continue. You wake, you eat, you train. Because the alternative, giving up, seeking death deliberately, would dishonor your memory. If you must die, at least die having tried to survive. At least die as a skilled fighter, rather than a broken slave. The pride is bitter, tainted, almost meaningless, but it is all you have. News reaches the ludus from the outside world. Bits of gossip, fragments of larger events. The emperor has sponsored games to celebrate a military victory. A famous gladiator has retired after winning his 50th combat. Grain prices have risen, causing unrest in Rome's poorer districts. A senator has fallen from favor and been exiled. None of this affects your life directly, yet you listen hungrily to any information from beyond the walls. The ludus is a world complete unto itself, but knowing that other worlds exist provides strange comfort. Occasionally, the lanista invites guests to watch training. Wealthy Romans who plan to sponsor their own games come to inspect the available gladiators, assessing skill levels and marketability. They stand in the shaded colonnade while you train in the sun, pointing and discussing as if you were deaf or stupid. Which gladiator would please the crowd? Which would provide a good match against a particular opponent? How much would it cost to rent a skilled murmillo for a single afternoon's entertainment? You perform for these visitors. You fight with extra flair during the demonstration combats, showing off techniques, playing to the invisible future audience. The better impression you make, the more likely you are to be selected for higher quality games events with larger purses, better medical support, more generous editors who might grant missio. Lesser games are more dangerous. The editors have smaller budgets and care less about preserving expensive gladiators. Death rates are higher in provincial games than in the great spectacles of Rome. One of the visiting sponsors watches you particularly closely. He confers with the lanista, gestures toward you, nods. Later, you learn that you have been selected. 3 weeks from now, you will fight in the amphitheater at Puteoli during games honoring a local magistrate's election victory. You will face a Threx, one of the curved sword fighters. The combat is scheduled for mid-afternoon, part of the main gladiatorial program. The news settles over you like cold water. 3 weeks, 21 days until you discover whether you can survive, whether your training means anything, whether courage exists in your heart or only fear. The other gladiators offer advice, contradicting each other, each drawing from personal experience that may not apply to your situation. Watch the Threx's footwork. Beware the curved blade hooking your shield. Keep moving, conserve energy, play to the crowd, finish quickly, finish carefully. The advice is well-intentioned, but overwhelming. Your training intensifies. The doctor works with you specifically now, drilling the techniques most useful against the Threx. You practice defense against the Sika, learning to angle your shield to deflect the hooking attacks. You work on offensive sequences that exploit the Threx's smaller shield. Again and again, you rehearse the combat until the movements become automatic, embedded in muscle memory deeper than thought. The other man your opponent trains somewhere else, perhaps in another ludus or in the same complex, but kept separate to prevent familiarity that might spoil the show. You will meet him for the first time when you face each other in the arena. He is training as hard as you are, receiving the same advice, harboring the same fears. One of you will leave that sand alive, possibly both if missio is granted, possibly neither if the combat goes badly wrong. These are the only outcomes. The nights before your first fight are difficult. Sleep comes in fragments, broken by images of death, by replays of training sessions where mistakes suddenly seem catastrophic. You wake in darkness, heart pounding, convinced you have forgotten everything, that your body will fail you, that the crowd's roar will paralyze your mind. The Dacian beside you wakes when you do. He says nothing, simply places a hand on your shoulder, silent acknowledgement. Solidarity between men who understand fear. After a moment, you both attempt to sleep again. The final week arrives. Your training reduces in intensity. The lanista wants you rested, not exhausted. You eat particularly well, building energy reserves. The physician examines you carefully, treating minor bruises, ensuring you are in optimal condition. You are valuable property about to be risked, and every precaution must be taken to maximize return on investment. 2 days before the games, you are allowed to bathe in the ludus's facility. The water is lukewarm, the facility modest, nothing like the grand thermi you will later see, but it serves. You scrub away accumulated sweat, feel muscles relax slightly in the water. Other gladiators preparing for the same games join you. Few speak. There is little to say. The night before, you barely sleep at all. You lie in the darkness, listening to the breathing of other men, wondering if this is your last night alive. The thought is strange, almost unreal. Tomorrow at this time, you might be dead. Your body might be dumped in a mass grave, your brief existence forgotten. Or you might survive, might win, might begin the long climb toward freedom and fame. The uncertainty is worse than either outcome would be. Dawn arrives. This is the day. We step backward now, roughly a century and a half before the Gladiator you have just inhabited. The Ludus still exists in Capua, that southern Italian city renowned for its gladiatorial schools. The training is the same brutal, methodical, designed to create efficient killers for public entertainment. The hierarchy persists. The chains ignite. The physician maintaining valuable property. The constant awareness that you are simultaneously less than human and more valuable than most free citizens. But something is different in the year 73 BCE. A tension has been building, invisible to the lanista, but obvious to those who live with chains. Perhaps it is simply one indignity too many, one beating that breaks patience rather than spirit, one moment when a man decides that dying free is preferable to living his property. His name is Spartacus. He is Thracian, from the mountainous regions of what is now Bulgaria. Some sources suggest he once served as an auxiliary soldier in the Roman army before being enslaved. Perhaps he deserted. Perhaps he was captured in one of Rome's endless border conflicts. The details blur across centuries. What remains clear is that by 73 BCE, he trains in the Ludus at Capua, learning to kill for entertainment, waiting for his turn in the arena. And he decides to escape. Imagine the planning required. 70 men must coordinate, must trust each other with their lives, must wait for the precise moment when opportunity and readiness align. The Ludus is a prison designed specifically to hold warriors. Guards patrol constantly. Weapons are locked away when not in use. The architecture itself prevents escape high walls, limited exits, chains at night. Yet somehow, on a spring day in 73 BCE, Spartacus and approximately 70 fellow gladiators breach the security. The historical sources provide few details about the actual escape mechanism. Perhaps they overpowered guards during training. Perhaps someone was bribed. Perhaps simple luck created a momentary gap in vigilance. What we know is this: they break free, and in the process, they seize weapons from the kitchen's cleavers, cooking spits, anything that can cut or stab. These are not their training weapons, not the gladius and shield they have practiced with for months or years, but crude implements that must serve. They fight their way out of the Ludus, leaving behind dead or injured guards. Blood is spilled quickly, quietly if possible, but necessarily. Freedom is not granted. It must be taken by force. They run. 70 men, escaped slaves, heading toward Mount Vesuvius. The volcano looms over the Campanian plain, its slopes covered with vegetation, its summit occasionally smoking. It is rough terrain, defensible, far from the easy reach of Roman authority. They climb into the foothills, then higher, finding a depression near the crater that offers shelter. Here, they catch their breath. Here, they realize what they have done. Rome does not tolerate slave rebellions. The memory of previous uprisings, the Servile Wars in Sicily, still haunts the Republic's collective memory. Escaped slaves are not simply recaptured. They are made examples of. Crucifixion, torture, public execution. These are the expected punishments. Every man on that mountainside knows this. They have chosen between certain death as entertainment in the arena and probable death as rebels. At least this death will be their own choice. But first, they must survive. Word spreads. An impossible thing has happened. Gladiators have escaped. The lanista sends messengers to Roman authorities. Local magistrates dispatch a militia force, perhaps 3,000 men, more than enough to overwhelm 70 escaped slaves. The Romans approach Mount Vesuvius with confidence. They will surround the mountain, starve out the gladiators, recapture them, and crucify them as warnings. Spartacus and his men wait above. They have been joined by others local slaves who heard of the escape, desperate men seeking any alternative to their current existence. The 70 have become perhaps 100 and more. They are poorly armed, lacking armor, facing trained soldiers. Logic suggests their rebellion will end here, crushed against the volcanic rock within days of its beginning. But Spartacus possesses something the Roman commanders do not expect: tactical intelligence. He has fought for Rome, understands Roman military thinking, recognizes the patterns. The Romans block the conventional paths down the mountain, confident that the gladiators are trapped. They settle in to wait, expecting surrender. Instead, the gladiators craft ropes from wild grapevines growing on the volcanic slopes. At night, they descend the sheer opposite face of the mountain, the side the Romans assumed impassable. They circle around, and at dawn, they attack the Roman camp from behind. The militia, expecting besieged slaves, instead faces a surprise assault from warriors who have nothing to lose. The fight is brief and decisive. The Romans break. Some flee, others die. The gladiators capture weapons, armor, supplies. News of this victory ripples through the countryside. 70 escaped gladiators have defeated 3,000 Roman soldiers. The impossible has occurred, and in that impossibility, thousands see hope. Slaves throughout southern Italy begin to run. They flee the farms where they labor in chains, producing the grain and olive oil and wine that feeds Rome's expansion. They abandon the mines where they dig precious metals that fund legions. They leave the workshops, the households, the construction sites. They flow toward Spartacus like water, seeking a channel. The rebellion swells. 100 becomes 500. 500 becomes 5,000. By the end of the first year, perhaps 70,000 or more escaped slaves march with Spartacus. They are not an army in the Roman sense. They lack uniform training, consistent equipment, military discipline. But they possess desperation and rage, and the simple determination to never be property again. Rome sends more forces. Praetor Gaius Claudius Glaber led the first defeated militia. Now Publius Varinius arrives with proper legions. Surely trained Roman soldiers will crush this slave rabble. The engagements occur throughout Campania, running battles and skirmishes. And impossibly, inexplicably to Roman minds, the slaves win. Spartacus demonstrates tactical brilliance, using terrain, dividing Roman forces, striking where the enemy is weakest. Varinius's army is defeated, scattered. The praetor himself barely escapes. The rebellion is no longer an escaped group of gladiators. It has become a full-scale slave war, threatening the very foundation of Roman society. Understand what Rome has built itself upon. The Republic conquers endlessly, expanding through Italy, across the Mediterranean, into Gaul, Greece, Asia Minor. Each conquest brings prisoners of war, defeated populations, human beings transformed into property. These slaves form the labor foundation of Roman prosperity. They work the great latifundia estates that displaced small farmers. They row the ships, build the roads, mine the silver that finances campaigns. Without slave labor, the Roman economic system collapses. And now those slaves are in open revolt, defeating legions, threatening the homeland itself. The rebellion continues through 73 BCE and into 72 BCE. More slaves join. The number reaches perhaps 100,000, possibly 120,000, according to some ancient sources. The figures are uncertain, likely exaggerated, but even accounting for exaggeration, this is a massive uprising. This is a significant portion of Italy's enslaved population, choosing freedom over safety, choosing the risk of death over the certainty of bondage. Spartacus leads, but he does not lead alone. Other commanders emerge. Crixus, a Gaul, commands a large contingent. Enamos and Castus lead other groups. The rebels are not unified in strategy or goals. Tensions exist between those who want to escape Italy entirely, heading north toward the Alps and their homelands, versus those who want to remain in Italy, raiding and living as free people in the countryside. Roman forces continue to arrive. The Senate sends both consuls for 72 BC, Lucius Gellius Publicola, and Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Clodianus, with 4 legions between them. Rome is taking this seriously now. This is not a local problem to be handled by praetors or militias. This threatens the Republic itself. The rebels splinter. Crixus leads approximately 30,000 slaves, mostly Gauls and Germans, to operate separately from Spartacus's main force. Whether this represents strategic disagreement or personal conflict, the sources do not clarify. What is clear is the outcome. Roman forces under Gellius catch Crixus's group on the slopes of Mount Garganus in Apulia. The battle is fierce. The slaves fight with desperation, but they face professional legionaries with superior equipment and training. Crixus dies in the fighting. 2/3 of his force, perhaps 20,000 men and women, are killed. Spartacus, learning of Crixus's death, makes a decision that reverberates through the generations. He captures 300 Roman prisoners and forces them to fight as gladiators in funeral games honoring Crixus. The symbolism is pointed, bitter, perfect. Romans who made slaves fight to the death for entertainment are now forced to experience that fate themselves. The roles reverse. The oppressors become the entertainment. Whether this provides satisfaction to men who have lost friends and freedom, we cannot know. But it makes a statement that echoes across centuries. The rebel army moves north, heading toward the Alps. Spartacus's apparent strategy is clear escape Italy, cross into Gaul or Germania, disperse to homelands where Roman authority is weaker or non-existent. It is pragmatic, sensible, perhaps the only realistic long-term survival strategy. Rome will never negotiate with escaped slaves. Rome will never grant amnesty. The only safety lies beyond Roman borders. The army fights its way through northern Italy. They defeat Roman forces repeatedly. The 2 consular armies are outmaneuvered, beaten in battle, forced to retreat. Spartacus demonstrates remarkable military ability. He uses the terrain, preserves his forces, strikes decisively when advantage appears. The rebel force reaches Mutena, near the Alps. Freedom is within reach weeks of marching, then across the mountains, then beyond Rome's grasp. And then Spartacus turns south. The historical sources debate why. Some suggest his followers refused to leave Italy, preferring to continue raiding rather than return to barbarian homelands they barely remember. Some propose that Spartacus believed escape was impossible. Rome would hunt them even beyond the Alps, would treaty with Gallic or German tribes to extradite escaped slaves. Perhaps he hoped to cross to Sicily, where previous slave revolts had occurred, where defensive terrain might allow a permanent free settlement. Or perhaps, after years of training to fight, after months of winning victories, after seeing Roman legions flee before his army, he simply believed they could win, that the impossible could become real, that slaves could defeat Rome itself. Whatever the reason, the army turns south, marching back through Italy toward the tip of the peninsula. The year 71 BCE begins. The rebellion has lasted nearly 2 years. Rome's patience is exhausted. The Senate appoints Marcus Licinius Crassus to command 8 legions, approximately 40,000 to 50,000 soldiers, with a singular mandate: destroy the slave army. Crassus is wealthy, ambitious, and ruthless. He is one of the richest men in Rome, having made his fortune through property speculation and exploitation of prescription lists during Sulla's dictatorship. He seeks military glory to match his wealth. This slave revolt offers opportunity. He takes command and immediately addresses discipline problems. Roman soldiers have been defeated too many times by slaves. Their confidence is shattered. Crassus reinstates decimation, an ancient punishment where every 10th man in a disgraced unit is beaten to death by his comrades. The brutal discipline restores fear of commanders, if not respect. The message is clear. Crassus is more dangerous to his own men than the slaves are. They will fight effectively, or they will die by Roman hands. Spartacus's army has moved to southern Italy. They attempt to cross to Sicily, negotiating with Cilician pirates to provide transport. The pirates take payment gold and valuables seized during 2 years of raiding, then betray the agreement, sailing away without transporting a single slave. The rebel army is trapped on the Italian peninsula, Roman forces approaching from the north. Crassus orders his legions to build a fortification across the narrow peninsula, from coast to coast. A wall and trench, 40 miles long, sealing the slaves into the toe of Italy. It is an enormous engineering project, accomplished in weeks through legionary labor. The slaves are contained, besieged, facing slow starvation. Spartacus attempts to break through the wall. In winter, during a storm, his forces fill sections of the trench with earth and debris, breach the fortifications, and escape north. The army has diminished. Perhaps 70,000 remain, the rest having dispersed or died in skirmishes. But they are free of the siege, still capable of movement, still dangerous. Crassus pursues. Other Roman forces converge. Marcus Terentius Varro Lucullus arrives with troops from Macedonia. Pompey the Great returns from Spain with his legions. The greatest generals of the Republic are assembling to crush a slave revolt. Rome devotes the full weight of its military power to this single purpose. The final battle occurs in 71 BCE, somewhere in southern Italy. The exact location is uncertain, perhaps Lucania. Spartacus recognizes that escape is no longer possible. The Roman forces are too numerous, too well positioned. He can surrender, which means certain death by torture, or he can fight, which means probable death in combat, but at least death as a warrior rather than a slave. He kills his horse before the battle. The gesture is symbolic and practical. He will not flee, will not need a mount for escape, will fight on foot with his men. If they die, he dies with them. The battle begins. Tens of thousands clash Roman legionaries against enslaved warriors, professional soldiers against desperate rebels. The fighting is close, brutal, exhausting. The slaves fight with the ferocity of people who have nothing to lose, inflicting heavy casualties on Roman forces. But they are outnumbered, eventually surrounded, slowly cut down. Spartacus tries to reach Crassus directly, fighting through the Roman lines toward the commander. If he can kill Crassus, perhaps the Roman forces will break. It is a desperate strategy, nearly suicidal, but desperation is all that remains. He cuts down the centurions guarding Crassus's position. He presses forward, fighting with a gladiator's skill multiplied by absolute commitment. He does not reach Crassus. The Roman lines are too deep, too disciplined. Spartacus is surrounded, wounded multiple times, brought down. He dies on his feet, fighting, never surrendering. His body is never identified after the battle lost among thousands of corpses scattered across the field, indistinguishable in death from the other slaves who fought beside him. The rebel army is annihilated. Approximately 60,000 slaves die in the battle or shortly after. 6,000 prisoners are taken, and Crassus makes his example. The Appian Way is Rome's greatest road, running from Rome south to Brundisium, a stone-paved highway carrying commerce, armies, information. It is a symbol of Roman engineering, Roman power, Roman civilization imposing order on the Italian landscape. Along this road, for 130 miles from Capua to Rome, Crassus crucifies 6,000 captured slaves. The crosses are erected at regular intervals, perhaps one every 70 yards. Each carries a dying man, nailed or tied to wood, struggling to breathe as gravity slowly asphyxiates him. Death by crucifixion is neither quick nor merciful. It takes hours, sometimes days. Suffocation, dehydration, exposure, infection death arrives eventually, but slowly. 6,000 men. 130 miles. The mathematics are simple, the message simpler. This is what happens to slaves who rebel. This is the cost of seeking freedom. This is what Rome does to property that forgets its place. Travelers on the Appian Way walk for days past dying men. The groans, the pleading for water, the eventual silence as death claims each victim. These accompany every journey. The smell of death, the sight of crows and vultures, the casual horror of thousands of executions displayed as public art. This is normalcy to Rome. This is deterrence. This is the price of empire. The bodies remain on the crosses long after death. Roman law forbids removing executed slaves without permission, and permission is not granted. The corpses rot in place, visible reminders throughout the growing season and into the next year. Eventually, weather and scavengers reduce them to bones, and even the bones remain, decorating Rome's greatest road. Spartacus's body is never crucified because it is never found. Perhaps his companions hid it after the battle. Perhaps it was dismembered beyond recognition. Perhaps he received the warrior's death he sought, anonymous among thousands, never subjected to the shameful execution reserved for slaves. The sources do not tell us. He simply disappears into history, his fate as uncertain as his origins. Pompey, arriving after the main battle with his legions from Spain, encounters approximately 5,000 slaves attempting to flee north. His forces slaughter them easily. Pompey then claims credit for ending the slave revolt, asserting that while Crassus defeated the slaves in battle, it was Pompey who ended the war. The rivalry between these two men, Crassus and Pompey, will shape Roman politics for the next 2 decades, eventually contributing to the Republic's collapse. But that is a different story. For now, in 71 BCE, the immediate crisis ends. The slave revolt is crushed. The escaped gladiator who dared to challenge Rome lies dead. 6,000 reminders hang along the Appian Way. Order is restored. But something has changed subtly, permanently. Rome has glimpsed its own vulnerability. The slave system upon which the entire economy rests has revealed its fundamental instability. These are not passive victims, content in bondage. They are human beings who, given the slightest opportunity, will risk everything for freedom. They can organize, fight, win battles against professional soldiers. They nearly escaped. They nearly succeeded. The revolt reveals the contradiction at the heart of Roman power. The Republic conquers the Mediterranean, but each conquest creates more slaves, and more slaves mean more potential rebels. The system requires constant expansion to acquire new slaves, to replace those who die or revolt. But expansion requires legions, and legions require resources, and resources require slave labor. It is a cycle that cannot sustain indefinitely, though it will continue for generations more before finally collapsing. Roman slaveholders become more cautious after Spartacus. They avoid concentrating too many slaves in single locations. They increase security measures. They watch for signs of organization or rebellion. The paranoia persists for decades. Any large gathering of slaves prompts suspicion. Any rumor of unrest triggers military response. Yet the slave system continues. Rome's economy depends on it too completely to change. The great estates still need workers. The mines still need diggers. The households still need servants. So slaves continue to be bought, sold, worked until death or incapacity. The empire continues to expand, continues to enslave conquered populations, continues to build its prosperity on human property. And gladiators continue to train in the ludus at Capua, chained at night, preparing to die for entertainment. The rebellion changes nothing material about their existence. If anything, security increases. The lanista is more vigilant. Guards are more numerous. Weapons are locked away more carefully. The gladiators train, fight, die, exactly as they did before Spartacus. The rhythm continues, endless, unchanging, until eventually the empire itself falls and the gladiatorial games end forever. But the memory persists. A Thracian gladiator named Spartacus, who escaped with 70 companions and defied Rome for 2 years, who defeated legions, who threatened the Republic itself, who died on his feet rather than live on his knees. The memory cannot be crucified, cannot be buried in a mass grave, cannot be erased from history. It endures, whispered in the cells of gladiatorial schools, remembered by slaves throughout the empire, repeated across centuries as evidence that rebellion is possible, that Rome can bleed, that freedom is worth any price. You lie quietly now, in the darkness of your cell, not quite asleep, not quite awake. The story of Spartacus settles over you like a blanket, heavy with meaning you only partly understand. Tomorrow you will wake, and the rebellion will be 73 years in the past, already becoming myth. The crosses on the Appian Way have finally been taken down. The bodies are dust. The survivors are dead. Nothing changed, and everything changed. The ludus is silent around you. The other gladiators breathe slowly, sleeping or pretending to sleep. Outside, guards walk their patrols. In Rome, politicians debate legislation in the Senate. In Gaul, legions fight. In Egypt, grain is harvested by slaves. The vast machinery of empire continues its operation, indifferent to individual suffering, indifferent to individual courage, concerned only with its own perpetuation. You close your eyes. Tomorrow's training waits, and the day after that, and the day after that. The arena approaches, inevitable as sunrise. You will fight because you must. You will die or survive based on skill, luck, and the whims of crowds. This is the only certainty. But somewhere in your mind, the image remains a Thracian gladiator killing his horse before battle, refusing escape, choosing death as a warrior over life as property. The image offers no comfort, no practical advantage, no strategy for survival. Yet it matters somehow. It persists. The night deepens. Your breathing slows. The cell walls fade into shadow. And somewhere between waking and sleep, you drift away from the ludus, away from Rome, into a formless space where history dissolves and only rest remains. Let us move away now from blood and sand, from rebellion and chains, from the human drama of the arena. We shift our attention to something quieter, more enduring, yet in its own way equally remarkable. We consider stone, or what appears to be stone vast structures that have stood for 2,000 years, defying time, weather, and the countless forces that reduce human monuments to rubble. Roman concrete, the substance that allowed an empire to build on a scale unmatched until the modern era. The material that created domes spanning distances thought impossible, harbors that still function millennia after their construction, aqueducts carrying water across valleys and mountains, and mysteriously, a technology so effective that its precise formulation was lost for over 1,000 years, leaving medieval and Renaissance builders to puzzle over how ancient Romans achieved what they could not replicate. Take a slow breath, settle deeper into comfort. We are leaving the immediate struggles of individuals behind, expanding our view to consider the broader sweep of Roman engineering, the patient accumulation of knowledge, the application of that knowledge to transform landscape and sea. This is history written in materials rather than blood, in chemical reactions rather than political struggles, in structures that outlasted the civilization that built them. Begin with the Pantheon. You have perhaps seen images of this building, though images cannot convey its presence. It stands in Rome still, nearly 2,000 years after its construction, the best preserved Roman building in existence. Marcus Agrippa originally built a temple on this site in 27 BCE, but the current structure was completed around 128 CE under Emperor Hadrian's reign. Approach it from the outside, a classical temple facade with massive granite columns, a triangular pediment, an inscription crediting Agrippa, though the building is Hadrian's. Nothing about the exterior suggests the interior's revelation. You pass through the bronze doors, between columns quarried in Egypt and transported across the Mediterranean, and enter the rotunda. The space opens around you, circular, vast, lit by a single opening at the dome's apex, the oculus, 27 feet in diameter, open to the sky, allowing rain to fall directly into the interior, where it drains through channels in the marble floor. The dome rises 143 feet above you, spanning 143 feet across. For over 1,300 years, until the Florence Cathedral's construction in the 15th century, this was the largest dome in the world. And it is made of concrete. Unreinforced concrete, poured in sections, hardened into a single monolithic structure that has stood for 19 centuries without significant cracking or collapse. No steel reinforcement. No modern engineering techniques. Simply Roman concrete, carefully formulated, precisely applied, achieving what modern engineers study with respect and puzzlement. The dome's weight is immense, thousands of tons of material, suspended in a perfect hemisphere, pressing outward and downward simultaneously, held together by nothing except the concrete's intrinsic strength and the Romans' mathematical understanding of compression forces. The dome thins as it rises 20 feet thick at the base, tapering to less than 4 feet at the oculus. The concrete itself changes composition from bottom to top, heavier aggregate at the base, lighter volcanic pumice near the crown, reducing weight while maintaining strength. It should not have survived. Earthquakes have shaken Rome throughout the centuries. Weather has assaulted the structure, rain entering through the oculus, winter freezing, summer heat expanding and contracting the materials. Political upheavals, wars, the collapse of the empire itself, centuries of neglect, none of these destroyed the Pantheon. The concrete endured. Consider another example, less famous but perhaps more revealing. The harbor at Portus, Rome's primary port facility, constructed under Emperor Claudius and expanded by Trajan. The harbor required massive breakwaters extending into the sea, protecting ships from Mediterranean storms. These breakwaters were built using concrete poured, underwater technique that seems almost impossible without modern equipment. The Romans developed a method called pozzolana concrete, named for the town of Pozzuoli near Naples, where volcanic ash with particular properties was quarried. This volcanic ash, when mixed with lime and seawater, created a hydraulic cement, one that hardens underwater, unlike traditional lime mortar, which requires air exposure to set. Imagine the engineering problem. You need to build a wall extending hundreds of feet into the sea, rising above wave level, strong enough to withstand storms and tides, permanent enough to serve for centuries. You cannot work in open air. The structure must be built in water, often quite deep water. Modern engineers would use steel-reinforced concrete, cofferdams to create dry workspaces, powered equipment to place materials. The Romans used wooden forms, volcanic ash, lime, and seawater. They constructed wooden frames defining the breakwater shape, then filled these with concrete mixed on shore or on barges, poured into the forms, and allowed to harden underwater. The chemical reaction between the volcanic ash's aluminosilicates and the lime's calcium hydroxide created crystals that bonded with seawater, forming a matrix stronger than the individual components. And remarkably, the seawater itself improved the concrete. Modern Portland cement deteriorates in marine environments. Salt water gradually penetrates the material, corrodes steel reinforcement, causes spalling and failure. Roman concrete does the opposite. It grows stronger over time in seawater as the volcanic ash continues reacting with minerals in the ocean, forming new crystalline structures that fill microscopic gaps and reinforce the existing matrix. Sections of Roman harbor concrete examined by modern researchers show this process clearly. After 2,000 years submerged, the material is denser, stronger, more cohesive than when originally poured. It has self-healed. It has improved with age. This is not how modern concrete behaves. This represents a fundamentally different material science, one we are only beginning to understand. The formula seems simple enough in its components: volcanic ash, lime, seawater, and aggregate broken stones or ceramic pieces mixed into the binding material. Yet the ratios matter. The specific type of volcanic ash matters. The lime's preparation matters. The aggregate size and composition matter. Temperature, mixing method, curing time, dozens of variables influence the final product's quality. Roman engineers developed this knowledge empirically, through trial and error across generations. They did not understand chemistry as we do. They could not observe molecular structures, could not test crystal formation in laboratories, could not precisely measure chemical reactions. They simply experimented, observed results, refined techniques, and passed knowledge from master to apprentice. The volcanic ash came primarily from the region around Mount Vesuvius and the Phlegrean fields near Naples. This area is volcanically active, producing particular types of ash rich in silica and alumina, the crucial components for the pozzolanic reaction. The ash was quarried, transported throughout the empire wherever major construction occurred, shipped in amphorae and barges to building sites from Britain to North Africa. The lime was produced by heating limestone in kilns to high temperatures, driving off carbon dioxide and leaving calcium oxide quicklime. When mixed with water, this created calcium hydroxide, a strongly alkaline slurry that served as the binding agent. The quality of limestone used, the temperature and duration of firing, the fineness of grinding afterward, all these affected the final concrete's properties. The aggregate varied based on local availability and structure requirements. For foundations and heavy structures, they used broken stone basalt, limestone, tufa. For lighter elements like upper walls and dome sections, they used ceramic fragments from broken pottery or volcanic pumice. The aggregate provided structural strength and reduced the amount of expensive lime mortar needed. Mix these components in the correct proportions, and you create Roman concrete opus cementitium in Latin. Pour the mixture into wooden forms, tamp it down to remove air pockets, allow it to cure for weeks or months, depending on the structure's size, and you have a monolithic stone-like material that will potentially last millennia. But why did this knowledge disappear? How does a civilization forget a technology so fundamental to its architectural achievements? The answer lies in Rome's gradual collapse, the fragmentation of empire, the loss of trade networks, and specialized knowledge. Roman concrete required specific ingredients, particularly the volcanic ash from specific Italian sources. As the empire contracted, as trade routes became unreliable, as the economic system supporting large-scale construction projects collapsed, access to pozzolana became difficult. Moreover, large-scale concrete construction required significant organization labor forces, transportation networks, engineering expertise, substantial capital investment. The massive building projects of the imperial period depended on empire-wide resources. A single aqueduct might require years of work by thousands of laborers, materials from across the Mediterranean, engineering skills concentrated in specialized schools and guilds. As the Western Roman Empire fragmented in the 5th century, these organizational structures dissolved. Cities shrank. Trade declined. The tax base supporting public works evaporated. Why develop expertise in building massive concrete domes when no one can afford to commission such structures? Medieval builders had different needs and resources. They built in stone, timber, and brick materials available locally, workable with smaller labor forces, suitable for the castles, churches, and modest civic buildings their societies required. They studied Roman ruins with admiration, but they could not replicate the techniques. They lacked the volcanic ash, lacked the engineering knowledge, lacked the resources for large-scale experimentation. Some Roman knowledge persisted. The concept of mixing lime mortar remained. Small-scale hydraulic cements using different pozzolanic materials were occasionally developed. But the specific formulation that created the Pantheon's dome, the harbor concrete that strengthened over centuries, this was lost, buried in the ruins of empire, waiting for rediscovery. The Renaissance brought renewed interest in Roman architecture. Architects measured Roman buildings, attempted to understand the engineering principles, wrote treatises on ancient techniques. Andrea Palladio, Leon Battista Alberti, and others studied proportions, symmetries, design philosophies. But the concrete itself remained mysterious. They could see it in the ruins often covered with decorative stone veneer or brick, but visible in damaged sections. They called it rudis, or simply Roman cement, recognized its durability, but could not recreate it. Their attempts produced weaker materials that cracked and failed. Something in the Roman formula eluded them. The breakthrough came gradually, beginning in the 18th century. Engineers examining Roman ruins more systematically began analyzing the concrete's composition. They recognized the volcanic ash component, understood its importance, began experimenting with similar materials. John Smeaton, designing the Eddystone Lighthouse off the English coast in the 1750s, experimented with hydraulic cements and discovered that lime mixed with clay-containing materials produced water-resistant concrete. His work, though not directly replicating Roman concrete, applied similar principles. In 1824, Joseph Aspdin patented Portland cement, named for its resemblance to Portland stone when hardened. This became the standard modern cement, mixing limestone and clay, firing them at high temperatures, grinding the result into fine powder that reacts with water to form concrete. It was effective, relatively cheap to produce, could be manufactured anywhere with the appropriate raw materials. It enabled the concrete construction of the modern-era skyscrapers, dams, highways, bridges. But it was not Roman concrete. Portland cement hardens quickly, an advantage for modern construction schedules. Roman concrete cured slowly, gaining strength gradually over months or years. Portland cement weakens in seawater. Roman concrete strengthens. Portland cement requires steel reinforcement for tensile strength. Roman concrete achieved remarkable durability without reinforcement. They are different materials, solving similar problems through different chemical pathways. Modern research into Roman concrete accelerated in recent decades as scientists applied advanced analytical techniques to ancient samples. Electron microscopy revealed crystal structures within the concrete matrix. Chemical analysis identified specific mineral compositions. Researchers examined cores drilled from Roman harbor structures, studied how the material evolved over 2 millennia of seawater exposure. The discoveries are remarkable. The volcanic ash Roman engineers used contains aluminum-rich minerals that react with lime and seawater over time. These reactions produce stable crystalline structures specifically. Aluminum substituted tobermorite crystals that grow within the concrete, reinforcing it from inside, filling microscopic cracks before they can propagate into structural failures. This process continues for centuries. The concrete essentially self-heals, compensating for minor damage through ongoing chemical reactions with its environment. Modern Portland cement cannot do this. Once poured and cured, Portland cement is chemically inert. It may last decades or even centuries if properly made and maintained, but it does not improve with age. It slowly degrades rather than strengthening. The seawater's role proved particularly fascinating. Romans building harbors used seawater deliberately in their concrete. Mixture practical, since freshwater was limited at coastal sites, but also accidentally optimal for the chemistry involved. The sodium, magnesium, and potassium in seawater participate in the pozzolanic reactions, enabling crystal formations that would not occur with freshwater. The very environment that destroys modern concrete helps create ancient concrete's durability. Researchers at the University of California, Berkeley, and other institutions have worked to recreate Roman concrete using ancient formulations. They source volcanic ash similar to Italian pozzolana, Mix it with lime and seawater in Roman proportions. Observe how it hardens and ages. The results confirm what the ancient structures demonstrate. This material has properties modern concrete lacks, particularly in marine environments. But recreating the formula does not mean we will widely adopt it. Roman concrete has significant disadvantages for modern construction. It cures slowly, far too slowly for typical construction schedules. It requires specific volcanic ash, limiting production to particular geographic regions or requiring expensive shipping. It achieves its remarkable durability over decades and centuries, while modern buildings are designed for lifetimes measured in decades at most. We have rediscovered how Romans made their concrete, but we cannot simply replace modern materials with ancient ones. The contexts are too different, the requirements too changed, the economic calculations too altered. We learn from Roman concrete, admire it, study its chemistry, perhaps incorporate some principles into modern material science. But we do not return to building as Romans built. Walk through Rome today, and the concrete structures remain, often more intact than buildings constructed a mere century ago. The Pantheon still functions as a church, hosting services as it has for 14 centuries since its conversion from pagan temple to Christian basilica. The markets of Trajan, a massive complex of concrete shops and offices, still stands in recognizable form. Aqueduct sections persist across the Italian countryside, though no longer carrying water. The Colosseum itself, though more famous for its travertine exterior, contains enormous concrete foundations and structural elements holding the building together after 2 millennia of earthquakes, looting, and weathering. These structures have outlasted the civilization that built them by 1,500 years. The empire collapsed, languages evolved, religions changed, entire societies rose and fell, and still the concrete endures. It is a peculiar immortality, not the immortality of historical memory, which can be distorted or forgotten, but the physical persistence of materials that simply refuse to crumble as they should. There is something soothing in this permanence, something reassuring about materials that improve with age rather than decay. We live in an era of planned obsolescence, where products are designed to fail so new ones can be sold. Buildings are constructed to last decades, not centuries. Knowledge becomes outdated quickly, requiring constant updating. The pace of change can be exhausting. Roman concrete offers a counterpoint. It suggests that patience can produce superior results. That slow curing creates stronger bonds than rapid hardening. That interaction with the environment over long periods can improve rather than degrade. That knowledge carefully accumulated and properly applied creates works that transcend their creators' lifetimes. The Romans who mixed volcanic ash and lime on Mediterranean shores 2,000 years ago are long dead. Their names are mostly forgotten. Their daily concerns, political debates, personal ambitions, family dramas have dissolved into historical obscurity. But the material they created persists, carrying forward across centuries, functioning still, stronger now than when freshly poured. Imagine yourself not as a person now, but as a structure. Your foundation is deep, anchored into stable ground. Your walls are thick concrete, properly mixed, carefully cured, solid throughout. Time passes over you, years flowing like water, decades like seasons, centuries like long breaths. Rain falls on you, but you do not erode. Earthquakes shake you, but your monolithic mass simply resonates and settles again. The climate changes, temperatures fluctuate, storms assault you, and you endure. You are not alive in the biological sense, yet you persist. You change slowly, as minerals in your structure rearrange themselves, as microscopic cracks self-heal, as crystals grow in hidden spaces, gradually strengthening your matrix. You improve with age, becoming more yourself with every passing century. People walk through your spaces, generation after generation. They see you as background, permanent fixture, the stage upon which their brief lives play out. They do not consider how you are made, what knowledge created you, what chemistry binds you together. You simply are, reliable as stone, patient as mountains, silent as the deep earth from which your materials were taken. And in this imagining, there is peace. To be structure rather than person. To exist without anxiety about tomorrow. To serve a purpose through simple persistence. To be without needing to become anything else. The volcanic ash that formed Roman concrete began as molten rock deep beneath the Earth's surface. Pressure and heat forced it upward through weaknesses in the crust. It erupted violently into the Mediterranean air, cooled rapidly, shattered into countless fragments that fell back to Earth as ash. Over time, this ash was buried, compressed, lithified into stone. Then humans arrived. They dug it from quarries, broke it into usable sizes, transported it to building sites. They burned limestone in kilns, transformed its chemical structure through fire. They mixed ash and lime with water and aggregate, poured this mixture into wooden forms, allowed it to harden, removed the forms to reveal solid structures. Materials that took millennia to form volcanic ash. Limestone were transformed by human knowledge into new materials that would themselves last millennia. Earth became building, became harbor, became dome, became aqueduct. The natural cycle was interrupted, redirected, incorporated into human purposes, yet remained fundamentally earthen, mineral, geological. And when Rome fell, when the empire fractured and collapsed, when cities emptied and knowledge was lost, the concrete remained. Humans came and went, civilizations rose and fell, languages and religions and political systems cycled through their lifespans, and the material persisted, indifferent, patient, slowly strengthening through chemical reactions imperceptible to human observers. In geological time, even Roman concrete is temporary. Eventually, given enough millennia, it will crumble. The crystals binding it will dissolve or transform. The structure will return to component minerals, and those minerals will eventually subduct into the mantle and remelt, continuing the rock cycle that predates humanity and will outlast it. But on human timescales, on historical timescales, the concrete is effectively eternal, lasting far longer than the memories it contains, the purposes it served, the civilization that created it. Let your thoughts drift now, like ash settling after an eruption, like sediment accumulating on an ocean floor, layer by layer, slowly compressing into stone. The urgency of the present moment fades. The concerns of tomorrow become distant, abstract. You are simply here, now, existing without effort, breathing without thought, settling into stillness, the way concrete settles into form. The Pantheon's dome curves above you, though you are not in Rome. The harbor walls extend into the sea, though you are nowhere in water. The aqueducts span valleys you have never seen. These structures exist simultaneously in physical space and in imagination, real and remembered, present and historical, concrete and conceptual. And in this space between waking and sleeping, between awareness and rest, the distinctions blur. Are you listening to history or dreaming? Are you learning about concrete or becoming it? The questions do not require answers. They simply float, present but undemanding, like particles suspended in solution, waiting for the slow chemistry of time to transform them into something solid, something enduring, something at peace. The oculus of the Pantheon is open above you. Rain falls through it occasionally, drops descending through that perfect circle of sky, spattering on marble floors, draining away through channels worn smooth by 2,000 years of rainfall. But tonight there is no rain, only darkness, stars visible through the opening, distant points of light that traveled for years to reach this moment, entering through ancient concrete, witnessed by no one, existing simply because they exist. You settle deeper. Your breathing slows. The structures hold you walls of concrete, foundations deep, dome overhead, secure and permanent, and requiring nothing from you except rest. And gradually, gently, Without effort or resistance, you drift away from history, away from structures, away from waking thought, into the deep quiet where nothing needs to endure because nothing can be lost. We return now to the world of living people, though we approach them differently this time. Not as warriors facing death, not as rebels challenging empire, not as silent structures outlasting their creators. Instead, we observe Romans at leisure, at their most civilized and sophisticated, engaged in the daily ritual that defined their culture as much as conquest or law, the public bath. Imagine yourself approaching the baths of Caracalla on a typical afternoon in the early 3rd century CE. The complex rises before you, massive beyond any single building's need, occupying over 30 acres of prime Roman real estate. The walls stand over 100 feet high in places, faced with brick and marble, punctuated by enormous windows that flood the interior with Mediterranean light. The building can accommodate over 1,500 bathers simultaneously, with room for thousands more in the surrounding gardens, libraries, and exercise grounds. This is not merely a place to wash. This is a social institution, a community center, a demonstration of Roman engineering and civic values, made manifest in stone and water and heated air. Entry costs almost nothing, perhaps 1 quadrans, the smallest coin in circulation, sometimes free on days when wealthy patrons sponsor admission. The poor and the wealthy bathe side by side, though some separation exists by hour or wing. Slaves accompany masters. Foreigners mix with citizens. The baths are democratic in a way few Roman institutions are, united by the simple universal need for cleanliness and the Roman conviction that bathing is central to civilization. You pass through the entrance, joining the steady stream of afternoon bathers. The noise reaches you: first conversation, laughter, the splash of water, the echo of sound in vast spaces designed to amplify and blend it into a constant human murmur. The smell is complex: olive oil, perfumed unguents, clean water, human bodies, the smoke of heating fires somewhere beneath, incense burning in shrines. The temperature is comfortable. The entrance halls are climate controlled by the same hypocaust system that heats the baths themselves. Warm, but not hot. Inviting rather than overwhelming. You make your way to the appetiterium, the changing room. These are large chambers with niches carved into the walls where bathers store their clothing and possessions. There are no locks, no private lockers. You simply remove your tunic, sandals, and any jewelry, place them in an available niche, and trust that they will remain there. Theft is common enough that many bathers bring slaves, specifically to guard belongings, but most items are too cheap to bother stealing. The wealthy have already left their valuables at home. Standing here unclothed, you are simply a body among bodies. Social distinctions remain. You can identify the wealthy by their softer bodies, the evidence of abundant food and freedom from manual labor, while workers show muscles hardened by daily toil. But everyone is fundamentally equal in nakedness, stripped of the togas and tunics that normally signal status. The appetiterium is busy, but not crowded. People move through at a steady pace, some arriving, others leaving. Conversation flows easily. Baths are social spaces, places to encounter friends, make business connections, exchange gossip. A man might meet his patron here, discuss a legal case, arrange a dinner invitation, all while preparing to bathe. The boundary between public and private life blurs in the baths. What happens here is simultaneously intimate and communal, personal and social. You move deeper into the complex, following the progression that centuries of Roman bathing culture have established as optimal. First, exercise to warm the body and stimulate circulation. Then the heated rooms to sweat and cleanse. Then the cold plunge to close pores and invigorate. Finally, massage and oil, dressing, departure refreshed, clean, socially connected, reintegrated into civic life. The palestra stretches before you, an enormous open courtyard surrounded by colonnades, flooded with afternoon sun. This is the exercise ground where Romans engage in physical culture before bathing. Wrestling, ball games, weightlifting, running, various activities occupy different sections of the space. Young men wrestle on sand-covered ground, their bodies gleaming with oil that makes gripping difficult, turning the competition into a test of technique and strength. They grunt and strain, circle each other, look for openings. Small crowds gather to watch, offering commentary, sometimes placing small bets on outcomes. Others play Trigon, a three-person ball game requiring quick reflexes and coordination. The ball flies between players in rapid, unpredictable patterns, testing reaction time. Laughter erupts when someone misses, when the ball sails into spectators, when a particularly clever feint succeeds. You might join them, or simply walk the colonnade, warming muscles gradually, preparing for the heat to come. The exercise is not mandatory. Many bathers, especially older citizens, skip it entirely, proceeding directly to the heated rooms. But the ideal Roman bath experience includes physical exertion, the body pushed to mild exhaustion, so that the subsequent relaxation feels earned, deserved, complete. The palestra's architecture surrounds you with beauty. The columns are marble, the capitals elaborately carved. Statues occupy niches, athletes in various poses, gods associated with health and strength, portraits of emperors and benefactors who funded the bath's construction. The walls behind the colonnades contain additional rooms, libraries stocked with scrolls where bathers can read while waiting for less crowded bathing hours, lecture halls where philosophers hold informal discussions, shops selling food and wine for those who wish to linger all day. This complex serves purposes far beyond hygiene. It is a cultural center, an architectural marvel, a statement about what Rome values. The baths say, "We are sophisticated. We command resources sufficient to heat millions of gallons of water daily. We build monuments not just to gods and emperors, but to the ordinary pleasures of ordinary citizens. We believe that civilization includes leisure, that public life matters, that bodies deserve care and attention." Having exercised lightly, or not at all, you proceed to the heated rooms. The sequence is deliberate, carefully designed based on centuries of experience with bathing's effects on the body. You begin with moderate heat, allowing your body to adjust gradually, and progress to higher temperatures before finally shocking the system with cold water. The progression cleanses, stimulates circulation, opens pores, induces deep relaxation. The tepidarum is first the warm room. The temperature here is comfortable, like a mild summer day, perhaps 85 or 90 degrees. The room is large, vaulted, supported by massive columns that create smaller spaces within the larger hole. Light enters through high windows, filtered and diffused, creating a gentle glow rather than harsh brightness. The floors are heated from below, warm to the touch, but not uncomfortable to walk on barefoot. You sit on a marble bench, feeling the warmth seep into muscles. Around you, dozens of other bathers do the same. Some talk quietly. Others sit in silence, eyes closed, simply present. The atmosphere is peaceful despite the number of people. The vast space absorbs sound, creates distance even in proximity. You are alone together, sharing the experience without demanding interaction. Your skin begins to warm, blood vessels dilating, circulation increasing. You breathe the humid air, feeling it open your lungs, clear passages blocked by the dust and smoke of urban life. Rome's air is not clean cooking fires. Bathhouse furnaces, workshops, and kilns all contribute to a constant haze over the city. Here in the baths, the steam cleanses your airways, provides relief from the daily exposure to polluted air. After perhaps 15 or 20 minutes, time is fluid here. Unmarked by urgency, you move to the caldarium, the hot room. The temperature increase is immediate and significant. Perhaps 110 or 120 degrees, hot enough that breathing requires adjustment, that sweat begins almost instantly, that the body's cooling mechanisms engage fully. The caldorium is the heart of the bathing complex, architecturally and experientially. At the Baths of Caracalla, this room is an enormous circular space, crowned with a dome pierced by windows, surrounded by smaller hot pools filled with water, even hotter than the air. Steam rises from these pools, creating a thick, moist atmosphere that clings to skin, makes vision slightly hazy, transforms the space into something dreamlike and otherworldly. You immerse yourself in one of the hot pools, gasping slightly as the water, heated to perhaps 100 degrees or more, envelopes your body. The shock passes quickly, replaced by intense, almost overwhelming relaxation. Every muscle seems to release tension simultaneously. You float, weightless, suspended in heat and water, the boundaries of your body blurring in the uniform temperature. Other bathers occupy the same pool, sitting on submerged benches carved into the pool's sides, or floating as you do, lost in individual experiences of heat and water. Occasional conversation occurs, but mostly silence prevails. The heat is too intense for sustained social interaction. Speaking requires effort. Movement requires effort. You simply exist in the moment, feeling the sweat pour from your skin, your heart rate elevated, your breathing deep and slow. The engineering that makes this possible operates invisibly beneath you. The hypocaust system, perhaps the Romans' most elegant heating solution, consists of raised floors supported by small pillars, creating a cavity beneath the entire bath complex. Furnaces at the perimeter burn constantly, consuming enormous quantities of wood and charcoal. Hot air from these fires flows through the hypocaust cavity, heating the floors from below, then rises through channels in the walls, heating them as well, before finally exiting through roof vents. The system is brilliant in its simplicity. No pumps, no mechanical complexity, simply hot air rising naturally, channeled through carefully designed spaces, transferring heat to stone and water and air. Different rooms achieve different temperatures by their distance from the furnaces and the thickness of their floors. The caldarium sits directly above the hottest section of hypocaust, while the tepidarium occupies a moderate position, and the frigidarium has no floor heating at all. Maintaining this system requires an army of slaves working in brutal conditions. The furnace rooms are infernally hot, dangerous, filled with smoke and flying sparks. Wood must be constantly fed to fires that never go out during operating hours. Ash must be removed, water heated in enormous bronze boilers, systems monitored to prevent fire spreading beyond intended areas. These slaves, never seen by bathers enjoying the fruits of their labor, make the entire experience possible. They are the price of luxury, the hidden cost of civilization, the uncomfortable reality underlying every refined pleasure. But you, floating in the hot water, do not think about the furnaces below. You think about nothing, or nearly nothing. Your mind emptied by heat, your body liquid, your awareness reduced to pure sensation. After some time, minutes or perhaps longer, you have lost precise track. You emerge from the hot pool. The air feels almost cooled by comparison, though it remains very hot. You sit on the heated marble floor or on a bench, allowing the intense sweat to continue, feeling toxins purge through your skin, or so the Romans believe. Modern medicine disputes whether sweating actually removes toxins, but the subjective experience of cleansing is real enough. You feel lighter, cleaner, emptied of something nebulous but burdensome. An attendant approaches, carrying a strigil, a curved metal scraper, and a flask of oil. You can scrape yourself, or pay a small fee for the attendant to do it. Most choose the latter. You lie on a stone slab, and the attendant pours olive oil over your skin, then systematically scrapes it off with the strigil, removing accumulated sweat, dirt, dead skin cells, the residue of urban life. The oil and filth form a grayish sludge that the attendant wipes away with cloths. The process is simultaneously intimate and impersonal. The attendant touches your body methodically, professionally, without particular interest or judgment. This is simply work, one of thousands of daily scrapings performed in this complex, one small component of the vast machinery of Roman leisure. You are simply a body to be cleaned, and the attendant is simply someone who cleans bodies, and the transaction occurs without emotional content. When the scraping is complete, you feel renewed. Your skin is smooth, sensitized, almost raw. The attendant may offer massage, working aromatic oils into your muscles, kneading tension from your shoulders and back. Or you may proceed immediately to the final stage, the cold plunge. The frigidarium contrasts sharply with the caldarium. Where heat dominated before, cold dominates now. The room is unheated, often positioned to maximize shade and coolness. At the baths of Caracalla, the frigidarium is an enormous pool, fed by aqueduct water, perhaps 60 feet across, deep enough to swim in, though most bathers simply immerse themselves briefly. You approach the edge, feeling the cool air on your heated skin. The temperature differential is dramatic. Your body is still superheated from the caldarium, and the frigidarium air might be 70 degrees, the water perhaps 60 or even cooler. Your instinct rebels against entering, but you step forward, descend the steps into the pool, and the cold water closes over you. The shock is total, immediate, overwhelming. Every nerve in your body fires simultaneously. You gasp, thrash briefly, then force yourself to remain still, to breathe, to accept the cold. After perhaps 10 seconds, the initial shock passes. After 20 seconds, it becomes almost pleasant. Your blood vessels constrict, your heart rate slows, your body's core temperature drops toward normal. You feel intensely alive, alert, invigorated in a way entirely different from the lassitude of the hot rooms. You remain only a minute or two. Prolonged exposure to cold water is uncomfortable, potentially dangerous. Then you emerge, climb out, stand dripping on the marble floor. Your skin prickles with sensation. You are simultaneously exhausted and energized, emptied and filled, depleted and renewed. Attendants offer towels, large linen cloths to dry yourself. Once dry, you might apply more oil, this time perfumed, a final luxury. Unguents containing rose, lavender, cinnamon, more expensive fragrances imported from across the empire. Available here for a small fee, democratizing luxury that would otherwise remain the province of the wealthy elite. The bathing sequence is complete. You have been heated, scraped, massaged, shocked with cold, dried, and oiled. The entire process has taken perhaps 2 hours, though it might stretch to 3 or 4 for those who linger, who exercise extensively, who socialize between stages. You feel profoundly clean, not just on your skin's surface, but somehow deeper, as if the heat and water and cold reached into your very substance and purged something stale and heavy. Some Romans bathe daily. Others come several times per week. The poor might visit only occasionally, when they can spare the entrance fee and the time away from labor. But almost everyone in Rome uses the public baths at some frequency. Wealthy households have private bathing facilities, but even the rich often prefer the public thermae for their scale, their social opportunities, their sophisticated engineering that private facilities cannot match. The baths shape social relationships in ways both obvious and subtle. Business is conducted here. Marriages are arranged. Political alliances form. Gossip circulates. A man's reputation can be enhanced or destroyed by his behavior in the baths, whether he exercises with proper vigor, whether he bathes at appropriate hours, whether he interacts with proper decorum. To be excluded from the baths is to be excluded from society itself. Consider what these structures represent about Roman values and priorities. The baths of Caracalla required 6 years to construct, employed thousands of workers, consumed resources that could have funded military campaigns or grain subsidies. The complex used approximately 6 million bricks in its construction. The heating system burned tons of wood daily, requiring a constant supply chain of fuel from forests throughout Italy. The water supply came from aqueducts carrying millions of gallons daily from springs miles away. Compare this to our modern priorities. We build private bathrooms in every home, valuing individual convenience and privacy over communal experience. We exercise in private gyms, segregated by membership fees, or alone in our homes. We fragment leisure into individual consumption rather than collective participation. We have gained privacy and lost community. We have gained convenience and lost grandeur. Neither approach is objectively superior. Roman baths came with significant downsides: limited privacy, vulnerability to theft, exposure to diseases that spread in warm water, the massive environmental cost of heating systems, the slave labor underlying the entire enterprise. Modern bathing is more hygienic, more private, less resource-intensive per capita. But something has also been lost: the social dimension, the architectural ambition, the democratic availability of luxury. The ruins of the baths of Caracalla still stand in Rome. Though the roof collapsed centuries ago, the marble veneer was stripped away for other buildings. The pools are dry, the hypocaust system cold forever. You can visit them, walk through spaces that once contained thousands of bathers, stand where emperors and slaves once shared water and heat. The scale remains overwhelming even in ruin. The walls rise like cliffs. The windows frame sky instead of roofed spaces. Birds nest in niches that once held statues. And in those ruins, you can feel the ghost of what was not just a building, but an entire philosophy of civilization. An idea about what societies should provide for their members. A commitment to beauty and function and public good intertwined inseparably. Let your mind rest now in the Tepidarum, that warm room where temperature is perfect, where neither heat nor cold disturbs, where the body simply exists in comfort. Feel the marble beneath you, smooth and warm, supporting without demanding. The light filters through high windows, soft and golden, illuminating without glaring. Voices murmur around you, conversation without urgency, human presence without pressure. You are clean. The day's accumulated grime has been scraped away, the tensions released in hot water, the circulation restored by cold shock, the skin oiled and scented. You are, for this moment, exactly where you should be, doing exactly what you should be doing. There is nowhere else to go, nothing else required. You can simply rest here, suspended in warmth and comfort, held by architecture designed specifically to create this feeling. The empire outside continues its vast churning's legions marching on distant frontiers, senators debating in the forum, grain ships arriving from Egypt, slaves laboring in quarries, merchants haggling in markets, children being born and elders dying, the enormous complicated machinery of civilization grinding through another day. But here, in the Tepidarum, none of that matters. Here there is only warmth and rest, and the quiet satisfaction of a body properly maintained. Your breathing slows to match the rhythm of the space deep, easy, unforced. Your heartbeat settles into a steady baseline, neither elevated nor sluggish. Your muscles release their final holdings, surrendering completely to the support beneath you. And in this surrender, there is profound peace. The bath attendants move through the space, collecting soiled towels, replenishing oil supplies, tending to the endless small tasks that keep the complex functioning. They are mostly slaves, their labor invisible to the bathers who benefit from it. Their lives are not restful. But in this moment, you are not an attendant. You are a bather, allowed to rest, to experience leisure as a right rather than a reward, to simply be. And as you rest, the distinction between past and present begins to blur. Are you in Rome in the 3rd century, experiencing the baths of Caracalla at their peak? Or are you here, now, in your comfortable space, listening to history, imagining experiences across 2 millennia of distance? The question floats without demanding answer. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps neither is true. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between memory and imagination, between historical fact and personal experience. The Romans believed that bathing was essential to health, that the progression of hot and cold strengthened the body, that cleanliness stood next to godliness, or at least next to civilization. Modern medicine partially confirms these beliefs. Heat does relax muscles, improve circulation, provide temporary pain relief. Cold shock does stimulate the system, improve alertness, possibly enhance immune function. Cleanliness does prevent disease, though we understand the mechanisms differently than Romans did. But beyond the physiological benefits, the baths provided something more difficult to quantify, a sense of civic participation, of shared experience, of belonging to a society that valued your well-being enough to build monuments for your comfort. The baths said, "You matter. Your body deserves care. Pleasure is not shameful, but civilized. Community is valuable. Beauty serves function." These messages were delivered not through words, but through architecture, through the experience of moving through carefully designed spaces, through the ritual of bathing performed in the company of thousands of fellow citizens. The medium was the message, the building itself a form of communication about what Rome stood for. Darkness settles now, both in ancient Rome and in your present space. The baths close as evening arrives, the furnaces banked for the night, the pools emptying through drains, the attendants performing final cleaning tasks. Bathers emerge into the Roman evening, clean and relaxed, dispersing to their homes throughout the city. You emerge into your own evening, your own space, your own time. The journey through Roman history concludes, the various segments settling into memory like sediment into layers gladiators in their cells, slaves in rebellion, concrete structures standing across centuries, bathers in heated pools. Different aspects of one civilization, one extended moment in human history, one attempt among many to organize society, to find meaning, to build something lasting. Rome fell eventually. The last Western emperor was deposed in 476 CE, though the empire had been fragmenting for generations before that formal end. The Eastern Empire continued until 1453, but it was Greek more than Roman, Byzantine rather than Latin, the actual Rome of gladiators, and concrete and public baths dissolved into history, leaving only ruins and memories and influences woven so deeply into Western civilization that we barely recognize them as foreign. But in those ruins, in those memories, in those influences, something persists. Not the empire itself, which was often brutal, unjust, built on slavery and conquest, but the ambition to build greatly, to engineer brilliantly, to create public goods, to value civilization as something more than mere survival. That ambition remains visible in the concrete domes, in the descriptions of baths, in the stories of people who lived fully in their moment, despite knowing, perhaps, that their moment would pass. Rest now, as Romans rested after bathing, clean and comfortable, the day's tasks completed, the evening stretching ahead without demands. Let the images fade, the arena, the rebellion, the engineering, the baths, until only a gentle awareness remains, content to simply exist without requiring entertainment or stimulation. Your bed is not marble warmed by hypocaust, but it supports you adequately. Your room is not a Roman therme, but it provides shelter and comfort beyond what most Romans ever experienced. You do not have slaves to scrape oil from your skin, but you have hot water at your command, controlled by simple valves, heated by systems you need not understand or maintain. You live in an age of private comfort rather than public grandeur, and that has its own merits. The gladiators are long dead. The rebels were crucified millennia ago. The concrete structures stand, but serve different purposes, museums rather than living buildings. The baths are ruins, dry and cold, visited by tourists who struggle to imagine them functioning. That world is gone, utterly and completely, separated from you by 2,000 years of change. Yet you have walked through it tonight, have experienced something of its rhythms and textures, have understood for a moment what it meant to live then, to die then, to build then, to bathe then. And in that understanding, however incomplete, The past touches the present. History becomes personal, and the long human story continues its patient unfolding. Sleep now, if sleep comes. Or simply rest, hovering in that space between waking and dreaming where time loosens its grip and all moments exist simultaneously. The gladiator in his cell, Spartacus before battle, the Pantheon's dome overhead, warm water surrounding you, all present, all future, all now. Breathe slowly. Release the day. Let history hold you gently, the way warm water holds a body, the way concrete holds together across centuries, the way memory holds the dead, imperfectly, but with care, preserving what can be preserved, releasing what must be released. And rest. Simply rest.